Everyone knows about the Nike Air Force 1. Everyone knows about the Nike Dunk, and even more people know about the Air Jordan 1. Well, I probably wouldn't say even more people, but you can say that those three shoes are equally as popular as each other. They've been around for years and they've been doing the rounds as far as releases go for the longest time. There is a shoe though that was released in that same era and in the same year as the Nike Dunk and the Air Jordan 1 that doesn't quite get as much airtime as those other two shoes. The Nike Terminator. These are in their OG colorway in the Georgetown colors, and we're going to talk about them right now in this video. Let's get into it. There is no denying the fact that the Terminator shares a lot of similarities with the Nike Dunk and the Air Jordan 1 that were all released in 1985. I feel like the Nike Dunk and the Air Jordan 1 silhouettes are a lot closer together, whereas the Terminator is a lot more easy to separate from those other two silhouettes. I've done a video on this before, but I think the Nike Dunk and the Jordan 1s are different enough that you can easily tell them apart, but from a distance they do share a lot of similarities. You can't make any mistakes with the Nike Terminator though, mostly because of its signature feature, which is this oversized Nike branding around the back of the heel. But what's really interesting about this shoe is its history, and also the fact that we really haven't seen this released in the longest time. The reason why the Nike Terminator has these Georgetown colors as its OG colorways is because of the link that it has to the Georgetown Hoyas. The Nike Terminator was the team shoe for the side in 1985, and what is really interesting about that time in 1985 was the fact that there were a bunch of other college teams that were using the Nike Dunk as its team shoe. The Georgetown Hoyas though didn't opt to use the Nike Dunk, instead used the Nike Terminator that had the word Hoyas written across the back where we see the Nike logo now, and what is basically a signature feature of the shoe itself. There are a couple of subtle changes to the front end of the shoe that are different to the Dunk and also the Jordan 1 around the toe box, just in the shaping of it and the way that the paneling is done. But I think the biggest difference with the shoe is around the back end. It definitely has a very different shape to the Dunk and the Jordan 1. Where the Nike Dunk and the Jordan 1 have a more subtle slope between the top of the heel and the bottom part of the eye stay, the Nike Terminator has a much more defined heel area. You can see with this example here that is really reminiscent of the way that the Terminators were released in 1985. The heel area itself is really structured and is almost shaped like a cylinder around the base of the shoe. Something else I really appreciate about the Terminator is the material mix and the quality of the construction. I'm not going to say that this is like a top level pair of shoes both in its material and its craftsmanship, but for $200 in today's market, sometimes we're not even getting shoes that are considered a acceptable level of quality, both in their material mix and construction. And so it's nice to get something that does feel really nice in hand. The leather itself feels really soft, and where the Dunks I find have a leather that almost resembles more of a synthetic leather that tends to kind of crack and not crease really nicely, the Terminator doesn't seem to have that issue right now, although I haven't actually worn these at all, so I probably can't comment on that. Probably something you can check on in the comments after I've had a chance to wear them a little bit more, but going by how they feel in hand, they definitely feel like a nicer overall package than what the Dunks feel like. As far as the material mix goes in the Terminator, it's basically the same as a Nike Dunk or an Air Jordan 1 model. It's a full leather upper, textile tongue, and textile lining. I'm not exactly sure what midsole is used in the Terminator, but I would bet that it is the same as the Nike Dunk. So it's a cup sole. There are no air units encapsulated within that rubber cup sole, and the traction pattern underfoot is a little bit different than the Dunk and the Air Jordan 1 models. As far as sizing goes, they do feel a little bit long, and so there is probably an opportunity to size down half a size. It's a bit of a tricky one though, because of the limited availability. It's probably not a shoe that I would recommend gambling too much with. If you do own a pair of Dunks or a pair of Jordan 1s that you find fit you really well, I would just go with whatever size you get those shoes in, and you would be right if you are looking to buy a pair of Terminators. I've got a US 13, and I find with the Jordan 1s and the Dunks, I can kind of go between a 12.5 and a 13. The 13, as far as the high top goes, feels comfortable. It does feel like it is a touch long, but it's not something that is going to impact the comfort of the shoe. And as far as comfort goes, you hear me say it time and time again, it feels like a shoe of that era. It's not the most comfortable shoe in the world. It looks great, but it's not a shoe that you would want to spend all day in either, especially if it's really hot. There are some perforated portions around the toe box area, but there really isn't a great deal of circulation through the shoe. And so it's kind of one of those shoes that I would recommend wearing for shorter periods of time. Unless of course you happen to be one of those people that think that the Air Jordan 1 and Dunks are the most comfortable shoe ever, in which case you might find these to be equally as comfortable. From what I can tell, the Terminators will be released in a bunch of different colorways. I think it's great. It's really good to see some of these older models that were just as iconic back in the 80s as some of the other more popular shoes today have their time to shine for a new audience. The challenge, I think, is going to be availability, because it just doesn't seem to be a shoe that is stocked widely at all. Like here in Australia, it wasn't even available through the Nike website, and it's not available through the larger retailers like Foot Locker or JD Sports or anything like that. I bought these from a sneaker boutique. Well, they're not even really a sneaker boutique. They're more of a clothing boutique that happens to sell sneakers. So it would be nice to see some more places stock them, just so there is more visibility. And I think it is a great time for this shoe to be released, because the hype in sneakers overall has kind of died down a bit. There is more of a chance to actually get your hands on a pair than you probably would have had if these were released 2 years ago. I'm really keen to know what you guys think of the Terminator, if it's something that you knew was coming out, if it's a shoe that you think you will cop, and if you don't like it, why? Let me know in the comments below, but until the next video, laters.